Steve Harvey had seen grief walk onto his stage before. He had seen it in the way people straightened their shoulders as the curtain opened, in the particular brightness some people carry when they are holding something heavy and have decided not to let it show. He had seen families who were together because someone who should have been there wasn't. He had learned, over the years, to read the specific shape of that kind of presence, the one that includes an absence. He thought he knew how it arrived. He was wrong about this one. Because what walked through the curtain on a Friday afternoon in early November in Spokane, Washington, was not grief, wearing a brave face. It was a 16-year-old boy in a button-down shirt that was slightly too big for him, the shirt of a man who had not yet grown into it, with his grandmother on one side and his 11-year-old sister on the other, and a sealed envelope in his jacket pocket that his mother had written before she died. She had died 7 months ago. The letter was addressed in her handwriting. It said, "Open when you need to be brave." Felix Okonkwo had needed to be brave many times in the past 7 months. He had not opened it. He had brought it with him today, because today was the day his family was going to do the thing his mother had put on a list she had kept, in the last months, of things she wanted for them after she was gone. Not things she wanted done for her. Things she wanted for them. Playing Family Feud was number 4. It was a Friday afternoon in early November, and Spokane, Washington was in the middle of the particular gray that settles over the inland Northwest when October turns into something more serious. The trees outside the convention center had gone bare. The sky was the color of old pewter, low and flat. The kind of sky that does not threaten anything specific but makes clear that it is in charge. Inside the Family Feud taping venue, none of that was visible. The lights were warm, the set was bright, and the audience had the slightly elevated energy of people who have been waiting outside in cold November air and are now inside and grateful for it. The audience was good. A Friday crowd, a mix of retirees who had the time and younger people who had taken a half day. A group of college students from Whitworth who had won their seats through a campus contest and were sitting together in the back right section, with the slightly uncertain body language of people trying to decide if they were allowed to be this excited. They were. The woman next to them would tell them so before the first round ended. The Okonkwo family was backstage. 5 of them, Uncle Raymond, 48, who had driven from Portland the night before and was the quiet kind of steady, the kind that doesn't draw attention to itself and is therefore the most reliable kind. Aunt Esther, 45, Raymond's wife, who had been Adaeze's closest friend before she became family and who carried the loss of her with a particular complexity, the loss of a sister-in-law and a best friend in one person, 2 kinds of grief in the same body. Felix's younger sister Zoe, 11, who was old enough to understand everything and young enough that understanding it didn't help as much as it would eventually. And Grandma Josephine, 71, who was Adaeze's mother and who had outlived her daughter and who held that fact with a composure that was not distance. It was the other thing, the harder thing. The kind of composure that has been earned at enormous cost and does not call attention to itself. And Felix Okonkwo, 16, junior year at Worcester Technical High School, honor roll, quiet. Taller than he had been 6 months ago, in the specific rapid way of 16-year-old boys, wearing a blue button-down shirt that had been his Uncle Raymond's and that Raymond had let him borrow because Felix's good shirt didn't fit anymore, and there hadn't been time to get a new one, and the shirt wasn't the point. He had the letter in his inside jacket pocket, left side, over his heart. He had put it there this morning at the hotel, not because it seemed symbolic, but because the inside pocket was the safest place and symbolic was not how he was thinking about today. Today was about doing something his mother had wanted them to do. That was the whole of it. He had checked for the letter twice since arriving backstage. It was there. At the podium, Steve Harvey was handed a card. He read it, He set it down. He looked at the curtain. He had been doing this a long time. He picked the card up and read it again. Adaeze Okonkwo had come to Worcester from Lagos when she was 22, with a nursing degree from the University of Ibadan, and the particular mix of ambition and patience that people carry when they have come a long way to build something from a starting point that others cannot see. She had worked at UMass Memorial as a floor nurse for 6 years, then as a charge nurse for 8. Then as a nursing supervisor for the last 4 years of her career, which had ended not because she had stopped working but because her body had given her different terms. She had been diagnosed at 41, treated, remitted, then at 43, the second time, and the terms were different. She had spent the last year of her life, the last 14 months, not in the particular bitterness that a second diagnosis at 43 can produce, but in something that people who were around her in that time described with the word intentional. She became intentional. She decided what she wanted to spend her energy on, and she spent it there, and she did not spend it on what she could not change. The list had started as something between a journal and a letter. She had always written things down. She kept notebooks going back to Worcester Central High School in the 1990s, each one labeled on the spine in her careful handwriting. This one was different. It was not for her. It was for them. She had written it in the last 3 months, when she understood clearly what the calendar was. And she had not told anyone she was writing it until she was done and gave it to Raymond with instructions. Things she wanted for them. Not ceremonies, not markers. Things, specific, ordinary, particular. A meal she used to make that she wanted someone to learn to make so it would not disappear with her. A place she had always meant to take the children and had not. A conversation she wanted Felix to have with his grandfather in Lagos and the phone number to call. And the show. Family Feud. She had watched it her whole life. She had watched it in Lagos with her mother, who had found it on satellite television sometime in the 1990s and never looked back. She had watched it in Worcester with her children on evenings when everyone needed something easy and warm. She had said, once, not as a dying wish, just as a sentence, the way you say things, she had said, "I would love to watch you all do that together." She had not been able to apply before she died. Raymond had applied 3 weeks after the funeral, not because he thought the show would care, because it was on the list and it was something he could do. The show had called back. A producer had read Raymond's application letter, which explained where the application came from and why, and had called him back directly and said, "We want to do this right." They had asked Raymond one question. What would Adaeze have wanted for this? Raymond had thought for a moment. She would have wanted them to have fun, he said. She was not sentimental about grief. She was sentimental about joy. The producer had written that down. Felix had found out about the application 2 months ago when the callback came. He had not been surprised. He knew his uncle Raymond. He knew the list. He knew that Raymond was working through it the way Raymond worked through things, which was methodically and without announcing it. What he had not known, what Raymond had not told him, was the letter. Adaeze had written letters to each of her family members before she died. Raymond had his. Esther had hers. Josephine had hers, though she had not opened it and said she was not ready and nobody pushed her. Zoe had hers, which Adaeze had sealed with instructions that Zoe was to open it on her 16th birthday, no sooner. Felix had his. Adaeze had given it to him herself 2 weeks before she died in the hospital room in Worcester. She had pressed it into his hand and looked at him directly and said, "You do not have to open this today. You do not have to open it soon. But when you need to be brave and you cannot find it, open it." He had said, "What if I open it and I still can't find it?" She had looked at him for a moment. "Then we'll discuss it," she said. And she had smiled, and he had laughed, even though nothing was funny, because that was exactly what she would say. He had carried the letter since October, the month she died. He had put it in the inside pocket of his jacket, the good jacket, the one he wore to important things, and he wore the jacket on the days that required it, and on those days the letter was there. He had been brave many times since October. He had been brave at the funeral, giving the words he had written on the train ride to the church. He had been brave at the return to school, when nobody knew what to say to him and he had to lead the conversation. He had been brave with Zoe, who had nightmares for 2 months, and who came to his room at 3 a.m, and he never once let her see that he was afraid. He had not opened the letter. Today, in Spokane, in the backstage prep area of a Family Feud taping. He had checked the letter twice. He was not planning to open it today. He was planning to be brave the way he had been brave for the past 7 months, which was by continuing to move forward without the thing he most wanted, which was his mother. He was 16 years old, and he was doing that. The game was good, not because the Okonkwo family was exceptional at Family Feud. They were solid, organized, better than average, but because they played with the specific joy of people doing something that has meaning outside the game itself. They were not playing to win. They were playing because this was on the list. And that intention, whatever its source, made them present in the room in a way that the audience responded to from the first buzzer. Josephine, Grandma Josephine, 71, hit the buzzer in the third question of the first round with an answer that was both correct and delivered with the complete confidence of a woman who has no patience for hedging, and the audience loved her instantly and completely. Zoe, 11, played with the focused attention of a child who has spent the last 7 months being very grown up and is relieved to be doing something that is simply fun. She did not overthink. She pressed the buzzer when she knew and did not when she didn't, and said wrong answers with the same conviction as right ones, which is the correct strategy and also the correct way to be 11 years old. Felix played quietly. He was good, sharp, precise. He got 2 number 1 answers, but he played the way he did most things now, which was with his full attention on the task and nothing extra, not withdrawn, just contained. The way a person is contained when they are also holding something else. Between rounds, Steve came out from behind the podium. He did this sometimes, came to the floor, sat on the edge of the stage, made the space smaller. He had been watching Felix since the family walked out. "Felix," he said. "How old are you?" 16, Felix said. "Junior year?" "Yes, sir." "What do you want to do when you're done with school?" Felix thought about it for a moment. "I don't know yet," he said. "My mom wanted me to be a doctor. I'm thinking about it." "Your mom's a nurse, right?" "I read that." "She was," Felix said. He said it cleanly, not with any particular weight, just accurate. Past tense was the tense. Steve held very still for a moment. "She passed," he said. Not a question, confirming what he had read. 7 months ago, Felix said. April, the audience, which had been warm and loosely attentive, went quiet in the particular way of a room that has just adjusted its understanding of what it is in the middle of. "Your family's here today because she wanted you to be," Steve said. "It was on her list," Felix said. "She kept a list of things she wanted us to do." He paused, not like things she wanted done for her, things for us. Afterward, the pause after that sentence was the first real silence of the afternoon. Zoe, in the family section, was looking at her brother. Josephine was looking at the floor. Raymond had both hands on his knees and was looking at Steve with the expression of a man monitoring a situation. "What number was this?" Steve said. 4, Felix said. "On the list." "What are 1, 2, and 3? "We did 1. That was a trip to see my grandfather in Lagos. We're still working on 2 and 3. Steve nodded. He looked at Felix for a moment with the expression of a man who has read a card before a taping and now understands it in a different way than he understood it 10 minutes ago. "I need to ask you something," Steve said, "and you can tell me if I'm out of line." "Okay," Felix said. "Is there anything else you brought with you today?" Steve said. "Besides your family." Felix went very still, but what he said next was not what Steve expected. Felix looked at Steve for a long moment. Then he said, "She told me you'd know." The sentence went through the room like a current, low and invisible, but felt. "I'm sorry?" Steve said. "My mom," Felix said. "She watched this show her whole life. She used to say you could always tell when someone was carrying something. She said you had an instinct for it." He paused. "She said, if you ever go on that show, Steve Harvey will ask you. Don't be embarrassed. Just tell the truth." Steve Harvey stood with that for a moment. In the family section, Raymond was very still. Esther had her hand over her mouth. "What are you carrying?" Steve said. Felix reached into his jacket. He took out the envelope. It was a standard white envelope, slightly worn at the corner from being in the inside pocket for 7 months. His name was on the front, not printed, handwritten, in the handwriting of a woman who had been a nurse and wrote clearly for professional reasons. The address field was blank because it was not that kind of letter. Below his name, in the same handwriting, "Open when you need to be brave." He held it in both hands and looked at it. "My mom wrote it," he said, "before she died. She gave it to me herself." He paused. "She said to open it when I needed to be brave and couldn't find it." The audience did not make a sound. "Have you opened it?" Steve said. "No," Felix said, "in 7 months. "No." Steve looked at the envelope in this boy's hands. "Were there times you needed it?" he said. "Yes," Felix said. Simply. "Why didn't you open it?" Felix thought about this. It was not a question he was unprepared for. He had asked himself this many times. He looked at the envelope. "Because once I open it," he said, "that's all there is. She can't write another one." He paused. "I kept thinking, not this time. I can get through this one without it." And I did. And then the next one came and I thought, not this one either. He paused. "I don't know when the right time is. I keep not knowing." He looked up at Steve. "I brought it today because today felt important. Not because I was going to open it, just, I wanted it with me for something important." Steve was quiet. "What made today important?" he said. "Because she wanted us to be here," Felix said. "So if she can't be here, at least the letter can." A sound from somewhere in the audience. One person. Then silence again. In the family section, Josephine had both hands folded in her lap and was looking at her grandson with an expression that contained something very old and very specific. The expression of a woman who has watched her daughter's character exist in her grandson and is looking at it right now and knows what she is looking at. "Felix," Steve said. He said it quietly. "I want to ask you something, and I want to be clear that whatever you say, I will respect it. The answer is yours." Felix waited. "This morning," Steve said. "When you got up, when you got dressed and you put that envelope in your pocket and you knew you were coming here today to do something that was on your mother's list. Was that brave?" Felix blinked. He thought about it. "Yes," he said. "Was it hard?" "Yes." "Did you find it?" "The bravery?" A long pause. "Eventually," Felix said. "Then maybe." Steve said gently, "This is exactly when she meant." Nobody moved. Felix looked at the envelope. Steve did not tell him to open it. He did not say anything else. He took one step back, the way a person steps back from something they have no right to decide for someone else. The whole room waited. What happened next had nothing to do with Steve. It had nothing to do with the game, or the show, or the 200 people in the audience, or the cameras. It had to do with a 16-year-old boy and a sealed letter from his mother, and a question about whether this was the right moment. Felix ran his thumb along the seal. He stopped. He looked at Zoe. Zoe was 11 years old, and she was looking at her brother with enormous eyes, and she was not saying anything, but her face was saying something that was clearly legible to Felix and to nobody else in the room. Felix nodded once. He opened the letter. He read it silently. The room gave him that. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved the cameras. Nobody did anything except wait. The way you wait when something private is happening in a public space, and you understand that the right thing is to not make it more public than it already is. Felix read it once. He read it again. His face, as he read, this was what people in the audience said they would remember, did not collapse. It did not perform anything. It went through a series of things very quickly, the way a face does when it is receiving something that contains many different things at once, a small smile at something in the first line, and then something that was not a smile and was not grief exactly, and then something that was closer to recognition. The expression of a person reading words that are true about them and understanding for. The first time that someone else knew that. He finished. He folded the letter, he held it in both hands, he sat with it for a moment. Then Steve said, very quietly, "You don't have to share what it says." "I know," Felix said. Another moment. She said. Felix stopped. He looked at the floor for a moment, then up. He had his mother's habit, someone would say later, of looking at the floor when he was organizing something and up when he was ready to say it. She said she knew I would find ways to be brave without opening it. She said she had watched me be brave my whole life without knowing I was doing it, and she was not surprised I had made it 7 months without needing this. He paused. She said the fact that I kept it sealed this long was its own kind of brave, and that she said she knew, that the day I opened it would be a day worth opening it on. He stopped. And then she told me what she wanted me to know, he said. He did not say what that was. He did not need to. It belonged to him. What he did do after a moment was reach into the envelope. There was something else inside. A photograph. He took it out. He looked at it. He turned it so the room could see. It was a photograph of Adaeze, her in a chair, in what appeared to be a living room, laughing at something happening just outside the frame. She was 40, maybe 41, before the second diagnosis. She was wearing a yellow dress. Her laugh was full, head slightly back, eyes almost closed. The audience saw it. You could feel it travel through the room, person to person, the specific sensation of seeing a woman who is gone alive in a photograph laughing. Zoe made a sound. Josephine closed her eyes. Esther turned her face into Raymond's shoulder. Raymond did not move. He was looking at the photograph of his sister, and he was not hiding anything on his face, and was not going to. Felix held the photograph. He looked at it for a long moment. "She put this in," he said, "so I'd remember what she looked like when she was happy." He paused, not sick. Happy, he looked at Steve. "I had forgotten," he said. "Not what she looked like. What she looked like when she was happy." His voice did not break. It thinned. "I keep the sick version in my head because that's the last version." She knew I would. He looked at the photograph. She fixed it. That sentence, "she fixed it," went through the room the way the right sentence does, not dramatically but completely, landing in everyone who heard it at the same depth and staying. Steve Harvey was looking at this boy. He was not going to say anything for a moment. He was doing the thing he had learned to do in this job and in his life, which was to let something be what it was without rushing to the next thing. He let it be what it was. When Steve spoke again, it was not to the audience. It was not to the cameras. It was to Felix. Just Felix. The way you talk to one person when there happen to be 200 other people in the room. I need to tell you something, Steve said. And I need you to hear it as a man talking to you, not a host, not television, a man. Felix was looking at him. Your mother put Family Feud on a list, Steve said, of things she wanted for you, after she was gone. Yes, Felix said, she put it there because she wanted you to be in a room together. Happy, playing together. He paused. Not grieving, not managing. Together and happy. Felix nodded. I need you to look around this room, Steve said. Felix looked. Josephine, his grandmother, who had outlived her daughter and was sitting in the family section looking at her grandson with the full force of everything she had left, which was considerable. Raymond, who had applied to this show 3 weeks after the funeral and had driven from Portland and had let Felix wear his shirt and had not said anything about any of it. Esther, who had been Adaeze's best friend and who had cried in Raymond's shoulder a moment ago and had looked up now and was looking at Felix with both eyes clear. Zoe, 11 years old, who had her mother's yellow dress on. Not the same one, a different one, yellow, chosen this morning at the hotel because she had wanted to and had not explained why to anyone. Look at them, Steve said. Felix looked at them. Your mother is not here, Steve said, and that is a fact that does not change, and I am not going to pretend it does. He paused. But look at what she made. He let the room hold that. She made a family that drove from Portland and flew from Worcester and brought a yellow dress on a trip because someone needed yellow today without knowing why. She made a grandmother who outlived her and is still here. She made a daughter who smiles with her whole face because that is how her mother smiled. She made a son who carried a sealed letter for 7 months through every hard thing that came, not because he didn't need it, but because he kept finding the brave in himself first. He looked at Felix. And then she put it all in a room, together, on a game show in Spokane. He paused. Because that is what she wanted. Not ceremony. Not grief. This, you here together, Felix was holding the photograph. He was looking at his family. She's here, Steve said. Not the way you want, but here. Zoe stood up from the family section. She walked across the stage, 11 years old in a yellow dress, walking to her brother, and she stood next to him and she put her hand on his arm and she did not say anything. Felix put his arm around her. He held the photograph between them so they could both see it. Josephine stood up next. She walked slowly, with the dignity of a woman who has had a long time to practice walking toward hard things without stopping. She came to Felix's other side. She looked at the photograph. She said one word, in Igbo, quietly. It was not translated. It did not need to be. Raymond and Esther came down. The family gathered around the photograph of Adaeze Okonkwo, laughing in a yellow dress before she was sick, before she was diagnosed the second time, before the 14 months of intention and list writing and letters sealed with instructions, before all of it. The Adaeze who had come from Lagos at 22 with a nursing degree and a particular kind of patience. The Adaeze who had watched Family Feud with her mother on satellite television. The Adaeze who had put this specific room on a list for her children. They stood around the photograph. They were together. Steve Harvey stepped back. He stepped back far enough that the camera had to find him at the edge of the frame, and this was fine with him, because this was not his moment. He stood at the side of the stage with his hands clasped in front of him. His expression was not composed. He had stopped trying to compose it somewhere around the sentence she fixed it, and he had not picked it back up. He was a man standing at the side of a room watching a family be the thing their mother made them. He was not going to pretend that was not what it was. The family stayed in the center of the stage for a long time. Nobody asked them to move. Nobody cued anything. The production team, by some unspoken agreement, simply stopped moving and let the room be what it had become. The college students from Whitworth in the back right section were not performing their earlier uncertainty anymore. They were just watching. One of them, later, outside, would tell the others that this was the thing she would tell people about when she was older, when she was trying to explain what a room full of strangers can do when something true happens in it. She did not have the words yet. She would find them. The woman who had organized the group outing was sitting very still with her hands in her lap. The retirees in the middle section were the quietest they had been all afternoon. When the family had done most of their gathering, when Zoe had sat down in the chair next to Felix and Josephine had taken the seat on his other side, and Raymond and Esther had arranged themselves around the edge of it, Steve came back to the center of the stage. He pulled a chair. He sat down across from Felix. "Can I say something?" he said. "Go ahead," Felix said. He had the letter folded in his shirt pocket now, close. He had the photograph in his hand. Steve looked at the photograph for a moment. "She looks like Zoe," he said. "I know," Felix said. "Zoe doesn't know that yet." Zoe looked up at her brother. "You do," Felix said. "Same smile, same everything." Zoe looked at the photograph. She looked at it for a long moment. "I didn't know that," she said. "Mom knew," Felix said. The room held that. Steve was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I want to say something that is not about grief, because I think your mother would not want this to be about grief." He looked at all of them. "She made a list," he said, "not of what she wanted for herself, not of what she needed from you. A list of things she wanted for you. After she was gone." He paused. "Think about that. In the last months of her life, the thing she was organizing was your joy. Not her legacy, not what she wanted to be remembered for, your joy. Specific, ordinary, particular joy. A trip to Lagos, a phone call to a grandfather, a game show." He paused. "That is not a small thing. That is a person who understood something that most people never get to. That love, when it is real, is not about the person who is doing the loving. It is entirely about the person being loved." He looked at Felix. "She spent her last energy making sure that after she was gone, you would still have things to look forward to. Things to do. Together, because she knew that forward is where you needed to go, and she was going to make sure you had somewhere to go." He paused. "The letter," he said. "She told you it would show you brave. And it did, but not by teaching you something new, by showing you that you already had it. You had it for 7 months. You had it at the funeral, and at the return to school, and at 3 a.m. when your sister came to your room." He looked at Felix. "She didn't give you brave, she gave you confirmation." He sat back. That is what that letter was. A mother telling her son, "I see you. I always saw you. And what I saw was enough." He looked at the family. "She is number 4 on a list," he said. "There are things you still have to do. A grandfather to call. 2 more things on that list. And you are going to do them." Together, he paused, because she did not make a list so you would grieve at it, she made it so you would have reasons. He stood up. He looked at Felix one more time. "Go finish the list," he said. Felix nodded. He put the photograph in his jacket pocket, next to where the letter had been. He reached into his shirt pocket and took the letter out. He held it for a moment. Then he handed it to Josephine. His grandmother looked at him. "She wrote you one too," he said. "You don't have to open it. But she also wrote you one." Josephine held her daughter's letter. She held it for a long time. They stayed until the light changed. This was the detail that the production assistant, not Jerome from the last taping, a different one, a young man named Vincent, who had been doing this job for 8 months and who would remember this Friday in November for the rest of his life, noticed first. That the light through the high windows of the venue had gone from late afternoon gray to the darker, softer gray of early evening. And the Okonkwo family was still on the stage, talking, not about Adaeze, not about the list, about smaller things, about Zoe's science project, which involved a potato battery and had taken a turn, about whether the team from Portland that Raymond followed had a chance this season, about which he had strong feelings, about Josephine's neighbor in Worcester who had recently acquired a dog that had opinions about the fence between their yards. Felix was not saying much. He was listening. He had always been the listener in the family, his grandmother said later. Even as a small boy, he would sit at the edge of the grown-up conversations and absorb everything and say very little. And you would forget he was there until he said the one precise thing that revealed he had heard everything. He had the photograph in his jacket pocket. He had folded the letter back into the envelope after handing it to Josephine, and she had held it for a long time and then folded it into her own pocket, and they had not said anything about it. Because some exchanges between grandmothers and grandsons do not require words. Later in the car on the way back to the hotel, Zoe asked him what the letter said. He thought about it. She said she was proud of me, he said, and she gave me some instructions. What instructions? Look after you, he said. Make sure Grandma laughs. Call Grandpa every month, not just on birthdays. Go to college, but don't go too far. He paused. Don't hold on to sad things longer than they have use. Zoe was quiet for a moment. Is that why you gave the letter to Grandma? Felix thought about this. Grandma has been holding on to something sad, he said. Maybe now she has something else. Zoe looked out the window. Mom was very organized, she said. She was a nurse, Felix said. They're all organized. Zoe laughed. Then Felix laughed. In the front seats, Raymond and Esther heard them and did not turn around. They had been waiting for that sound. The list had 4 more things on it. The grandfather in Lagos. 2 things Felix had not yet told anyone about. And a 5th thing he had added himself, not because his mother had put it there, but because he thought she would have wanted it there, to teach Zoe to make the jollof rice. Adaeze's recipe, from the notebook in the kitchen. The one with the margin note in her handwriting that said more pepper than you think, less time than you think, and trust yourself. He did not know how to make it yet. He was going to learn. They drove back to the hotel in the early November dark through Spokane, with the flat landscape opening out in every direction the way it does in the inland northwest, enormous and calm and indifferent to what has happened and patient with what comes next. Felix had the photograph in his pocket. He had his sister in the back seat. He had a list. If someone in your life gave you something to look forward to, leave forward in the comments. And if this reached you today, share it with someone who needs a reason. Stories like this one are the ones worth keeping.